Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it would actually cure a lot of the problem if there was some sense of honor and dignity in the role as a mother. I think people would run toward it. I mean, you could even say like teachers historically. I mean, it's kind of changing now, but teachers historically have been like a high status in the community role with low pay. There are many examples of this now where like you can compensate for low pay with high status, but the current like conception of motherhood is no pay and low status. And I mean, this is it kind of does vary in different communities too. I mean, there are certain like trad hyper conservative communities that are a little bit weird about motherhood and sort of don't they look very much look down on women who struggle with fertility, and I do not endorse that. I think that's kind of disgusting and reflects actually ironically like part of the same like industrialized like production oriented attitude toward people as machines, as like the liberals that they kind of claim to hate. But once again, separate issue.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of professions which are mostly now dominated by libs, which are high prestige, low pay. And they are a very clear demonstration of the fact that, man cannot live on bread alone. Like, people care about status, people care about this stuff. It can be very motivating to be held in high regard, even if the other forms of compensation are meager. And yeah, motherhood doesn't get it. And I don't know. I don't know if that was a kind of inevitable consequence of the second wave. That if you're going to agitate for women to get admission to traditionally masculine spheres, you sort of can't help but undermine the traditionally feminine ones. I don't know. Or if it's some kind of material change that's led to this. Or maybe, I don't know, we're starry-eyed and think that maybe mothers have always felt this way, always felt undervalued, even in more traditional societies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably truth in all of the above. Um, I mean, this is why I do have such respect for many, not all, of the first waivers, because they did recognize, I think industrialization and the way that society changed and moved men out of their homes into these cities that became dens of vice. I think a lot of the first waivers valiantly recognized the way that hurt mothers and wives, and called men to remember the ladies. And that was beautiful and good and important. And I maybe men need to be reminded of that sometimes. But I'm sure there are things that we should be reminded of too, ways that we can better love and respect our husbands.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of, there is something of a symmetrical crisis. I think that people feel this, the modern world is great in loads of ways. It really is. It's so nice having basically zero child mortality and running water. And, I appreciate those things enormously, but I think people do feel a sense of psychological distress, maybe low-level, consistent psychological stress from basically having this mismatch between their environments and what their brains are expecting. That's not even like the full throttle hunter-gatherer lifestyle. I just mean more like more like our modern environments of the last half century or post-industrialization, I suppose, are just so novel historically. And I think that can't help but cause people distress. And sometimes that's sort of specifically gender distress. And men feel it too. They definitely do. That's what they're talking about when they talk about being longhoused. Even though
Yes.
I don't love that expression.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you think they mean by that exactly?
I suppose it depends on who you're talking about. But I'm sure that part of it is the feeling that there is no role for traditionally masculine virtues except in some limited ways. But things like physical courage, it's It's not often that men will be called upon to display physical courage. I was actually just talking to my husband about this because we're talking about the, you're familiar with, you're probably not. Any Australia listeners will be familiar with the way that the Australian fire service works, where, because Australia is extremely big. And so there's a professional fire service in urban centres, or like places of high population density. And then basically all of country Australia is covered by the CFA, the Country Fire Authority, which is basically made up of volunteers. So you have fire trained firefighters, but they're unpaid across the country. And this is particularly important in parts of the country that are prone to bushfires. And there have, CFA volunteers have died, quite a lot of them, when there have been really bad bushfires. It's a genuinely brave and important role. And there isn't really, we were saying that there isn't really one like that in Britain because we don't have natural disasters in Britain, not really. So like there are lifeboat volunteers and things like that. But the idea of having this group of overwhelmingly men who are called upon in times of peril to defend a community, to defend their homes and lives from death and destruction, it just doesn't like that's something that's a phenomenon in Australia that doesn't exist in Britain. And it does mean that the CFA has this. I remember my grandfather was in the CFA for many decades. I know they do let women in now, but like realistically, men are the ones who are going to have to do these kind of tasks. It has a masculine prestige, which is very profound. And I think that I think men kind of long for that. It's obviously dangerous. But I think men long for that. And sometimes when they talk about being Longhouse, I think what they mean is that the inaccessibility of that kind of traditional masculine prestige for anyone doing an email job.
I think that sounds right. Probably some leadership. There's something about leadership built in there too. Men craving masculine leaders, and resenting being under the thumb of strange women. I think there are a lot of really masculine and actually great guys out there who like love their mothers and would do anything for their mothers, but when the authority in their lives and their work gets becomes that of like just some strange woman in HR to whom they have no attachments, sort of has say over their their daily communications and all of that. I can understand why that would actually make them feel resentful. Yes, yeah, I think that's what the Longhouse is. Like, if I'm being totally charitable, I think it's the reign of the HR ladies.
Yeah, it's an uncharitable read as well. That it's just
there is.
it's just a bunch of misogynists. I mean, there's obviously a little bit of that.
Right, for sure. But that's okay. We have our fair share of misinterests.
I guess so. Yeah.